Hey guys, so for today we are starting on the first page. So for this one, it's basically multiplying decimals, but also it's two-digit decimals. So for this one, you do 9 times 9, which is 81. 9 times 5, which is 45, plus 8, which is 53. 9 times 2, which is 18, and then 18 plus 5, which would be 23. And 9 times 2, which is 18 plus 2, which is 20. And then you put a 0 because every time you go from the number to the next number, you have to add 1 0. So basically, this one, it only adds 1 0 because we moved on to the next digit. So it would be 9 times 1, which is 9. 1 times 5, 1 times 2, and 1 times 2. Now for the next one, like I told you, you would add another digit, or another 0. So this one would get 2. But then for this one, usually when the number on the bottom is a 0, all of it becomes 0 because no matter what you multiply 0 with, it always stays as 0. And then lastly, the last digit, which would have 3 zeros, is 4 times 9, which is 36. And then you put the 3 up here. 4 times 5, which is 20. 4 times 2, which is 8. And 4 times 2, which is 8. So the answer would be, this would become 1, 12. 1 plus 3, which is 4, plus 5, which is 9, 2 plus 6, 8, 3 plus 2, which is 5, plus 2, which is 7, plus 0, which is just 7, 2 plus 8, which is 10, and then 8 plus 1, which is 9. And then remember how there's a decimal point? So when you multiply, instead of normally for addition, it would become, you would bring it down all the way. For multiplication, you would add how many digits are behind the decimal point. So for this one, there's 2 digits behind the decimal point for the first number, right? But for the second one, there's also 2 digits. So you have to add those, and then it would become 4, right? So you would bring it down 4 digits because you want to make it like, so the answer would be 907,891. So remember to always add the value of digits. So this has 2, this has 2, then it would become 4. Now for the next one, it's going to be 45. And 5 times 4, which is 20, plus 4, which is 24. 5 times 4, which is 20, plus 2, which is 22. 5 times 1, plus 2, which is 7. 0 for this digit because we moved on to the next one. 4 times 9, which is 36. 4 times 4, which is 16. 4 times 4, which is 16. 4 times 4, which is 4. And then again, you would add another 0 because we're moving on. So it would become 63. And then 28. And then 28. And then 7. And then another 0. So 9, 4, 4, 1. So you would add all of this, and then again add all of this. That's 3 plus 1, which is 4, plus 2, which is 6, plus 6, which is 12, plus 3, which is 15. 1 plus 6, which is 7, plus 1, which is 8 plus 7, which is 15, plus 6, which is 21, plus 8, which is 29, plus 9, which is 38. And again, 3 plus 2, which is 5, plus 1, which is 6, plus 4, which is 10, plus 8, which is 18, plus 4, which is 22. 2 plus 2, which is 4, plus 7, which is 11, plus 4, which is 15. And then lastly, 1 plus 1, which is 2. So again, since this one has 2 decimals behind and another 2, then it would become 4. So the answer would be 252.8505. And that's the answer. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because this is kind of difficult and there's a lot of problems, so it's probably going to take a long time. But I know you guys can do it, so yeah. And then for the next problems, this one you have to find factors. So there's like numbers that are called prime, which are like numbers that can't multiply by anything besides like 1 and the number it is. So for example, number 2, it would be 1 and 7, because 7 doesn't have a factor of any other number. So like for example, 86 has a lot of factors because, you know, it can be divided by a lot of numbers, right? So you could do 1 and 86, because 1 times 86 is 86. And then you could do 2 and 43, because you could divide by 2 and multiply 2 by 43 to get 86. And you can also do, can you do 3? You could divide 86 by 3, so you could do 8 divided by 3, which is 2. And then that would be 26, so you can't divide by 3. And then you can try, you can't divide by 4. And then you would keep on going till you find all of the factors for this number. But for number 2, you know how it's a prime number, right? So there's usually only 2 numbers, which is 1 and the number itself. And yeah, that's about it. And then for the next page, this is subtracting fractions. So what you would do is, since they have the same denominator, like we talked about last worksheet, we know that if they have the same denominator, then you can just subtract from the top, because it's like set up for you. So for this one, it's also the same, because 50 is the denominator for both of them. And then that would be 11 over 50. And then those are the answers. Now lastly, there's the last 2 worksheets. So what you would do in the 4th worksheet is you have to simplify the fraction. And you guys should know this by now, because we reviewed this over like multiple times. So if you still don't understand how to do it, you just have to basically try to find factors that both of them can be divided by, and then you would make it the lowest number possible. So for this one, if you think about it, you can divide both by 3. And you can't do more, because 12 can be divided by 4, but 9 can't be divided by 4, so you have to keep it that way. And then 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 12 divided by 3 is 4, so the simplified fraction would be 3 over 4. Now for the second problem, it's the same thing. I chose 5 because 5 is a prime number, like I told you guys earlier. So there's only one number you can divide by, which is 5. So it would become 1 over 12. Now, because it's a prime number, prime numbers, like I told you earlier, can only be multiplied by 1 and itself. So what I usually think is if this can be only divided by itself, then this should be divisible by 5. But if it isn't, then you would keep this fraction. But since we can simplify it, it would become 1/12. Now lastly, on the last worksheet, there's basically just you have to fill in what makes sense. So what I do for this is I would usually, if you can't like solve it in your brain, then you can think about like the opposite of this problem. So you can solve it out for like, 3 times something is 6. But then 6 divided by 3 is equal to this. Because it's basically like the opposite. So it would be the same thing as 6 divided by 3 is equal to this number. But then if you think about it, 3 times what would be 6? It would be 2. Which is pretty obvious. Now for this one, it's the same thing. You could think of the opposite. Like you would say, 2 divided by 2 is equal to this number. But then if you use common sense, then it would be 1 because 1 times 2 is equal to 2.